Hello. So I want to say a few words about this Armistice Day centenary. Um, it's a profound thought to think that it's exactly 100 years now since the end of the Great War. I remember being with my family just over 4 years ago when there was commemorations to mark the start of World War One in the UK. And in the last 4 years, there's been numerous events have taken place. The Times has run an interesting feature where they've actually reprinted their articles from the time. And there's been numerous sort of projects such as the Shrouds of the Somme, which is a very moving tribute. I don't want to talk too much about the background and the politics of World War One. That's a matter for historians to debate. I've got my own views on that, but it's not for this video. Um, Also, we now have no direct connection with the last military veteran to die, at least in Britain, back in 2009, Harry Patch. There are some very old people who were children at the time, and there was an old lady in the UK, I understand, who remembered as a child seeing the troops go off to war. But there is no direct connection in terms of the troops themselves. So it is now getting further back in time, and I do wonder after this centenary commemoration, will World War One become a little bit more distant? And will we consider World War Two, the Korean War, and other conflicts more? I'm not saying they've been overlooked, but with World War One getting more distant, that's just it. It's now a century, and that's really a profound point. You know, some people don't think there's any relevance to time frames like that. I think there is actually. I think it's a way that human beings contextualize something. So today I'm thinking of my great uncle Adam on my mother's side, who was killed at Passchendaele. Another distant relative, Francis Hazlitt, young man who died at the Somme. And looking up genealogy, I recognize a number of Hazlitts who actually died in the First World War. So they would have all been distant relatives. Um, So today, you know, I knew that when I was coming to China at this time, I would be here during this day. I've asked my parents to get some newspapers. It's a historic event. Theresa May, of course, has been in, I think it was Belgium. I understand President Macron has had a British grandfather who fought in the First World War. We tend to think of the First World War as being the trenches, which of course was saw some of the most intense fighting, but there was, of course, the Italian front, the Balkan front. There was the Dardanelles. There was the Eastern Front. Um, and also, whilst the guns fell silent on the Western Front, whilst we tend to see this day as the end of World War One, formally, of course, it didn't end until the Treaty of Versailles a year later. And there was a number of events leading up to that. So we tend to mark this event as being the end of World War One. But there were men who died in 1919 from the wounds. Um, I always think the early 1920s and that period would have been a rather somber sort of ghostly time because it was a society, not just in Britain, but in every country that was totally changed. And I think it would have been a strange time because there would have been thousands and thousands of men around dealing with post traumatic stress, which of course wasn't understood then. Horrible injuries, facial injuries, amputations. Um, I think the 20s must have been, in some ways, maybe worse than the war itself in terms of those who were dealing with that aftermath. I don't want to make any sort of overly sentimental message about this video, just a reflection on massive, massive sacrifice. Um, and we remember rightly the soldiers who died. But there were civilian deaths as well. I'm thinking of the young women who died in various munitions disasters um, at Chilwell in Nottinghamshire, Barnbow in Leeds, and elsewhere. Dangerous work. World War One, of course, drastically changed society in social senses. Um, it was a fascinating time, but also, of course, a deeply turbulent time. Then, of course, there was wars that broke out after the First World War, and in some ways overlapped with it: the Russian Civil War, the Turkish War of Independence, the Irish War of Independence, and the Irish Civil War. Um, Also, I sometimes think we remember the great battles of the First World War, like the Somme, Passchendaele. Those tend to stand out, Verdun. But actually, more men died in 1918 than the rest of the war combined. So the Spring Offensive and the Hundred Days Offensive were possibly even had higher casualties than the Somme and Passchendaele. But of course, exact figures are unreliable. What's irrefutable, though, is that this was whole-scale slaughter in a way that, I mean, to put it into context, the Race to the Sea and the Battle of the Frontiers in 1914 had more British casualties than every Victorian conflict combined. And that was just the first year. So the scale of World War One was horrendous. From a military point of view, World War Two, the overall casualties were, of course, much higher, but it was, I would argue, more global. Here in China, World War One isn't really remembered because China, of course, wasn't directly involved. At that time, China was going through its warlord era, which was a period of anarchy and violence. But World War Two is well remembered here for obvious reasons. Anyway, at 7 p.m. this evening, that will be 11 a.m. in the UK, I'm going to just have a little moment's reflection. And I don't want to sound like I'm being overly sentimental, but I do find it moving and poignant. And I think whatever differences we have in the UK with Brexit, let's just think today about all those men who died. And not just in the UK, let's remember those who died from all nations, including our foes in Germany and Turkey. And uh, let's remember that this was a total war, and it was a war that changed the world forever. Plato is attributed to the saying, "Only the dead have seen the end of war." Now, whether he said that or not, is very poignant. World War One really is testament to that. The war that was to end all wars, of course, didn't, and maybe war will never end. But let us hope there is never a war on that sort of scale again. That sort of vicious, mechanized, absolute war. The Eastern Front, of course, of World War Two was like that, but some lessons, of course, were learnt by World War Two. They mixed up regiments a bit more, and strategies had changed. They were stricter about age. All those reasons may be why the British military casualties of World War Two were significantly less. In fact, about half. It's estimated around 700,000 British troops were killed in the First World War. The figure for World War Two is around 390,000. And those are not exact figures, of course, but that's the estimates. Um, and I think there's a reason for that. I think some lessons were learnt by World War Two. Um, anyway, I'll leave it there. 100 years today. It really is a profound thought. Thanks for watching.